Hey, hello everybody. Welcome to Fieldstone. It's not really a Fieldstone for you. It's not a Fieldstone at 4, but it's just an opportunity that was introduced to me, and I thought this is something that our network needs to know about. So we like to be the convener of people and the facilitator of resources, and this is a perfect example of a resource that came to me highly endorsed by one of our network leaders, Sharon Ellis, who's the CEO at Habitat for Humanity, who knows Cynthia well, and asked that I meet with Cynthia. And when I met with her, as you're soon going to see, she was just so laid back in her approach and just so informational. And I thought, this is good. This would be good for the people that fit into the category that Cynthia works with. So when Robin Stropko sent out the invitation email, I'm glad that you responded and were interested. So absolutely not a hard sell at all. As you'll see from Cynthia's approach, it's just 100% providing information and another resource for you. I personally have not used Cynthia's services, but as I said, Sharon Ellis has, and I just thought, let's just introduce this opportunity to you. So I say that because if any of you work with people, with vendors or people out in the community that you just think are fabulous and would be also great for me to share with our robust network, please let me know, shoot me an email, introduce me. I'm happy to, again, be that connector with the for-profit world, with the nonprofit world, and just making all of our lives just that much richer, because the stronger we are, the stronger the community is that we serve. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Cynthia. I'm going to let Cynthia hold on. Before I let Cynthia introduce herself, I'd like all of you to introduce yourself and tell us what your role is in your organization. And then that will help Cynthia. And then she'll introduce herself, and then she'll go right into her presentation. So if you don't know me, I'm Robin Sinclair. I'm the Executive Director with Fieldstone Leadership Network. And we provide that safe space where nonprofit leaders can come together and learn from one another and support one another and become stronger in your role, ultimately strengthening your organization, as I said, and ultimately strengthening our county and community. I'm going to popcorn it to Dave.
Hi, I'm Dave Lugo. I'm the CEO of Moms Orange County in Santa Ana, and my role is the CEO, so I kind of have a little bit of everything. But previous to that, my first 2.5 years with Moms, I served as the CFO, COO. So obviously payroll handling and unemployment issues, I have some experience with.
And I see somebody, Glee. So that is Glee Harris. Glee, can you hear us?
Yes, hi. I'm sorry I'm not on video, but I'm driving.
That's okay.
So I am Glee Harris. I'm the CHRO for Girl Scouts of Orange County. And as the head of HR, I handle a lot of unemployment claims. So yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. And Delia.
I'm Delia Van Kampen. I'm the controller for Family Assistance Ministries, and I handle all the payroll, which is so much fun, and unemployment and things like that.
And Elizabeth.
Hello, everyone. Elizabeth Andrade, CEO for Family Assistance Ministries, and extremely grateful for Delia managing all of the payroll.
And unemployment.
And unemployment.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, Cynthia, it's all you.
All right, I'm gonna switch to screen sharing. I have a little Prezi for you.
Let me just make sure that did I allow that? Are you good?
You have disabled participant screen sharing.
Oh, hold on. Did it do it?
Yes. Okay, hold on. I just need to. These are always very confusing for me, basic files. Where is it? Here it is. Slideshow from beginning. Can everybody see that?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So I wanted to thank you guys for coming. As I was explaining to Robin, it is not the most fun thing in the world coming to a presentation hearing about unemployment. We have been doing this. 501c Services has been managing unemployment programs for nonprofits for 40 years now. So we have tons of experience, and we know it's not a good topic. It's not a good topic to talk about. It's not a good topic to deal with. It's not a good, no one wants to hear about it. No one wants to be laid off. No one wants to lay anyone off. And it's very, very often put on the back burner for a lot of busy executives like yourselves, where there's not someone to deal with it in a way that it maybe should be dealt with for the most efficiency way. So we have a few different options we're going to talk to you about. These are they're not necessarily our options, they're just options for you to consider. Because for those of you who are paying into the state programs, they can be very, very expensive. And I know Dave mentioned that he had already opted out of the state program. That's basically what we're going to walk you through with today. This is a very high level presentation. Normally it's about 90 minutes long. So you're lucky you're getting the condensed version, but I'm always happy to answer more questions. Or if you have any questions as we go along, please feel free to ask me about it. I put fun in quotes because, as I said, nothing's fun about unemployment. But this is just some facts that are important to put the groundwork on what we're going to talk about. The California State Unemployment Insurance SUI program right now is again in arrears. It was in a huge deficit situation when we had the last recession back in 2010. They finally in 2019 pulled themselves out of it. We are back in that hole again. We owe the federal government $19 million for unemployment claims that the pool had no money in. So because this California state program is run as a risk pool, they need to replenish the money in this pool so they can get out of debt with the federal government. And the way they're doing that is they're hiking up everyone's tax rates. Most people that we've talked to this year are paying the maximum tax rate, which is 6.2%. And that's the way they're going to try to get more money into the pool as they're paying off the principal and the balance and the interest to the federal government. In 1972, there is the first time that nonprofits first had to provide unemployment benefits to their separated employees. Up until that time, they were exempt. But in 1972, the federal government changed that and said, there's so many people in the sector now working, you guys need to provide unemployment benefits. And what they did at that time is they took a hard look at what they thought would be happening, which is that the nonprofit sector would have less claims and less people filing than the for-profit sector. So they set up this program where nonprofits could fund unemployment claims through the state programs or as a reimbursing employer. And we're going to talk about the reimbursing employer. The reimbursing employer, we believe, is a much better avenue for people to take. The problem is the federal government and the state governments didn't announce that nonprofits had an option. So by default, most nonprofits are still paying into their state programs. But right now, we have been diligently working. We've been doing this for 40 years. We've been working for 40 years trying to get the word out, trying to educate people like yourselves that there are other options that are substantially less expensive than paying into the state programs. Today, we are estimating about 2,000 California nonprofit employers are using an alternative method, and collectively they are saving millions and millions of dollars. This is just a list, and I will provide this to Robin, this presentation, so you guys can look at it more carefully. We're obviously not going to go through this list, but this is just some of the nonprofits in Southern California that are doing it. So when you sift through this list, you'll probably see some people down the street or people that you know, or maybe people that you've even worked with. And there's a lot more too. So what does it mean to opt out? Which employers can opt out? The answer is any employer who's a 501c3, and they have to be a C3. They can't be a C6 or C7 or anything like that. They have to be a 501c3, regardless of their employer classification code. So any of the sector verticals can opt out, and there's no regardless of any payroll size or revenue size. So any 501c, even with one employee, can opt out of the state program. And I have a little asterisk too. This also applies to government entities and native owned businesses. you're not there, so I'm just making that up. Those are the only 3 classes of employers who are allowed to opt out of their state programs. And as I mentioned, 72 was the first time this happened. And across the country, there's probably about 40,000 nonprofits who have chosen to opt out and are using one of these alternative methods. And for the most part, when they opt out of the state programs, they're doing it because they're saving money, and they can save a substantial amount of money. How do they do that? They are no longer paying into the state program. And when you pay into the state program, whatever your contribution rate that you're told that you need to pay, you never get that back. So it stays with the state, and because it's a risk pool, it's paying for everyone in the state of California's unemployment, not just your own separated employees. So when you opt out, you're only funding your own separated employees' unemployment charges. This gives you a much better control of your finances. So instead of saying on your audits or your CPAs, I've just paid $40,000 in unemployment line item. And then when you go back and look at it, said, but we really only had like $2,000 or $3,000 in charges. That other remaining balance, you don't know where it went. It's going to pay for the Pizza Boys unemployment, or one of the for-profit, Hollywood, anyone that's collecting unemployment. And we do not believe that the people like you and the executives like you who are working so hard to fundraise and to get money into their missions and to help the people that they help should be spending the money in the way of paying for SUI. So when you're out of the state programs, you no longer have tax rates. You are no longer subjected to things that are going on right now with the pandemic and the huge amount of claims that were filed, and the unemployment fund being insolvent, and the tax rates going up where you have no control of that. Your tax rates are going to go up. Your the taxes that the contribution that you're paying into the state are probably going to go up next year. Actually, this year, you should have just received your tax rate notices. When you opt out in California, you actually have a first-year benefit savings. And what that means is you'll save even more money, because the first 8 months of the year that you opt out, any unemployment that your separated employees are collecting and that you would technically be reimbursing to the state, those are going to come out of your old state account. And this is a real benefit for Californians, because their first year of opting out, they will have very, very, very low unemployment costs. So these are actually 2 live examples that we had this year, or in the last year or so, that we did an analysis for it. And people always say, does it make financial sense for us to opt out? And the answer is yes. We did a large survey a couple of years ago of 40 years of data of working on this. And it turns out that 80% of the forms that we receive in to do an analysis on, 80% of them, especially in California, are overpaying. And that means you're paying in to the state more than you're getting out in benefits. So these are 2 different size employees. These are the column on the left are things that we look at when we do our analysis. Number of employees, gross payroll, your SUI payroll, which is different, your tax rate, what you're being asked to contribute. And I call it a premium. And you'll notice people interchange the words unemployment tax and unemployment premium. It's actually an insurance premium. You're buying state unemployment insurance. You're buying an insurance policy from the state. So the money that you're putting in is a premium. And what your unemployment charges are and what the actual overpayment is. So on employer 1, it was a larger employer. Their payroll was 20 million. And the SUI payroll, of course, you know that in California, the taxable wage base is $7,000. So you're paying how you calculate your SUI payroll is you're paying on the first $7,000 of every employee's salary. That's very low. The tax rates are high in California. The taxable wage base is low. I don't know if you know this, but just up north of us in Washington, Oregon, their taxable payroll is $50,000. So they're paying unemployment tax on the first $50,000 of their employee's salary. So you're luckier in California for the taxable wage base. It's at the federal minimum, $7,000. There's about 5 states that have that. The fact that they've never raised it is very surprising to me, because every other state has raised their taxable wage base, and at any time it could be raised. There's a bill in Congress that's been in there for years now, trying to get it go from $7,000 to about $25,000. So at any moment, if you're paying into the state, you could get a notice that says the taxable wage base has been increased. And again, we're looking at an insolvent pool and a budget, the state budget's always a nightmare, but the unemployment part of it's always a nightmare. And if anyone comes into office in California and says, we need to get that pool replenished quicker than just raising the tax rates, we're going to raise the taxable wage base. So you would have a 6.2% tax rate. You're paying on $25,000 of everyone's payroll, and it could really be a nightmare. So it's good to always keep a watch out for that and listen to the news. When we hear things like that, we send them out to our community to let them know that tax rates are going up. So this employer one, their taxable payroll was 3.186 million. And that was because they had 450 employees. All of them were making at least $7,000. And that's how you pool that all together and you come up with that. They had a lower tax rate, 4.4% here in California. And they take that tax rate and they times it by their SUI payroll. And that's how the state comes up with what the contribution you're going to be asked to put into the state pool. So they were asked to put in $140,000 this particular year. And it had been pretty consistent in the past. As you can see, they only had $53,000 of charges. So they were overpaying by $86,000. That $86,000 is gone. That's fundraising money. That's money that could have gone to their mission. It's gone. Employer number two wasn't quite as bad. It was more along the size of some of your organizations that you work with. They had $1.2 million in payroll. Their SUI payroll was a little bit less because they only had 50 employees, 371,000. They were at the maximum rate though, 6.2%. And so their premium was 23,000. Their charges were 88.4. They were still overpaying. So these are two people when we ran these analysis for them, and we do 3-year look backs. Historically, we do 3-year look backs. So we try to get a really good idea of, does it make sense for this organization to opt out and collect that money, keep it in your budget and use it for something that you want to use it for. Both of these employers decided to opt out. Again, the way that this is just good to remember, the way that the tax or premium is calculated. It's the taxable wage base times the tax rate. Now the tax rates in California right now, it's on the F+ schedule, it's called. And so it's 1.5% to 6.2%. So we have a pretty high minimum compared to the other states. There are many states who have a 0% low tax rate. So there are people who actually, when you times anything by 0, it's 0. So they're not paying any unemployment tax. And on those ones, when we get an organization asking us to do the analysis, there are times that we say, you know what, you don't have any taxes. So I would stay with the state in your instances. We don't say that very often, but when it makes more sense for the organization to stay with the state, we will certainly tell them. But we also tell them if they're at 0 right now, that they should continue to keep an eye on that, because if it goes up, you will have a contribution that you need to make. Historically, and I was not going to put this slide in here, but I decided to keep it in here because I am 100% sure this pandemic is going to be over soon, and we're going to go back to the way it used to be. So historically, while you cannot control the taxable wage base, that $7,000, that's set by the state. You can't control that. It's going to be what it is. But you can generally control your tax rate, because in normal times, the tax rate is based on what your past experience has been. So if you've had high turnover, your tax rate is going to go up. Again, caveat, during this pandemic and probably for the next couple of years, most people are going to be seeing a 6.2 tax rate, even if you haven't ever had any claims, because that's just a way for them to get more money. But what I wanted to do is show you, if you were at the lowest tax rate, which is 1.5%, taxable wage base here, $7,000, 50 employees, SUI is $350, your contribution is going to be just a little over $5,000. And I showed you 2 other ones. And how these tax rates go up is very, very simple. And this is what I hear all the time is, I don't have time to deal with all these claims. You know, I'm in the state program. I've already paid my contribution. I'm just gonna, you know, whatever. Joe should be filing for unemployment. He doesn't deserve it. He was, you know, let go for cause, whatever. Anybody can file for unemployment. It doesn't matter how you let them go. They can file, they have the right to file for unemployment, and the unemployment system has a lot of holes in it. It could slip through the cracks, and Joe's now collecting unemployment. You're stretched super thin. You know, it's hard to manage all this. And you decide not to let a few claims go through. What's going to happen next year is your tax rate's going to go up. So it could go from 5,000. If you're just in the middle, you're at 11,000. Highest tax rate right now, 6.2%, you'd be paying $21,000. So you can see the dramatic increase of what happens when you don't have time to manage this program. We tell people who have opted out, even if they haven't opted out, if they want to stay in the state because they're at a low tax rate, it makes sense for them. We advise them strongly to keep an eye on every single claim that comes in. And that means, you know, the timeliness is really important too, because you can get penalties and surcharges if you do not pay that charge. But looking at it, is it the right person that, you know, did this person really get let go? The number of fraudulent claims in the last 2 years has been astronomical. Is it the right social security number? Is it the right taxable weight or weekly benefit amount that they should be receiving? If any of those things are not caught, or if you just decide to like let it go because I don't have time to deal with it, that's what's the increase is going to be. So making sure someone spends ample time with these claims and protesting every claim that you should protest. What some of you might know and remember from handling unemployment is there is the base period claims, which are a real nightmare. And we don't know who came up with that base period chart, which is the first, if you're an employer in the the last 5 quarters, and you've let someone go, they've gone back to get a new job somewhere, they're starting to collect benefits again, you're going to get charged for that. It's a proportional charge in California. So you'll get a piece of that because you are an employer in that base period. Base period charges cannot be protested, especially if you're a reimbursing employer. That's one of the gotchas we're going to talk about. They cannot be protested. And about 40% of claims or charges that you'll see on coming through your system are base period charges. That's just standard across the board. Every nonprofit, every for-profit, every employer is looking at about 40% of the charges being unprotestable. But what that also means, which is very frustrating, but what that also means is 60% of the charges that come through could potentially be protested. We are big on protesting and trying to protect the employer. And we suggest that you do the same thing too. What we do with our customers is we have hearing representation. So when they go into unemployment court, they're going to have a hearing representative with them. Even though California is a very employee-friendly state, we have over 80% success rate when we protest and we win claims. And we're doing this because we're there to protect you, the employer, to make sure that your out-of-pocket costs are as less as they can be. So this is something to think about moving forward, is to keep a very, very strong eye on the claims that are coming through and making sure they're valid and making sure that if they're protestable, that you protest them, because otherwise your budget's going to get hit the following year. What happens when employers opt out? So the way they opt out in California, you can opt out at any quarter. We suggest opting out in the 4th quarter or before the end of the 1st quarter, because if you're using a payroll company, they're collecting this money to pay the state. They will pay it on March 31st. So if you can opt out before the 1st quarter, you do not have to pay that 1st quarter unemployment premium or tax to the state. If you do it in quarters 3 or 4, 2 or 3 really, you've already paid the state and you can't get that money back. So you might as well stay in the state until the end of the year. But up until March 31st is a really good time to do it. So when you opt out, the state's going to issue you a new tax ID number, and that will identify you as a reimbursing employer to the state. The process for filing for unemployment for your separated employees is exactly the same. There's no reason they need to know you're a reimbursing employer. It has no effect on them whatsoever. They will go down to the EDD office. They will file for a claim, and you will get a copy of that claim. Everything's electronic nowadays, so you'll get a copy right away. If you're using a third-party administrator or anyone like that, they will get a copy of that claim as well. And then we start working on it. If we decide not to protest it, the payments are still being made by the state. So the state essentially fronts the money to this person who's starting to collect weekly benefits. They will award the claims. The state will pay the claimant. The state will bill you, and you will reimburse the state. That's where the term reimbursing employer goes. And they will send you a bill, and you have X number of days to pay that bill. But the benefit of one of the hugest benefits is, like I said before, you're now only paying claims on your own employees. You're not just putting in a blanket amount and, for your own protection. It's paying for all of California. You're only paying for your own employees. So that will essentially, unless you have super, super, super high turnover, which most employers don't, your costs are going to be reduced dramatically. There are some gotchas to being a reimbursing employer. First of all, managing it is very complicated and very, very time consuming. And it's one of those areas that people learn on the job, because no, designated HR person, there's no training for managing the unemployment process. We have been actually trying to get SHRM and HRCI to supply them content and have them implement an unemployment training process, because it would be very handy for a lot of the HR people to know how to do it instead of learning it on the job. It's a huge area of risk for your organization. It's an area of financial risk. It's an area of legal risk. And it's emotional risk, really, because it's very hard to process. It's hard emotionally to let someone go and then process all those claims. It takes a tremendous amount of time. Every single claim we're predicting, if it's handled correctly, should take about 10 to 20 hours to watch it, and to watch every single week what's happening with it, and to make sure it's managed properly through the state and it's being reimbursed properly. It's important always, and I know you as professional HR people, which you guys are, some of them, to make sure your paperwork is airtight. And that's one of the things that we do trainings on ourselves, is we want to make sure everyone that we work with has a super buttoned up HR department. And that is, are you documenting things correctly? Is your discipline proper? Are you getting signatures? Are you doing handbooks? Are your employees acknowledging the process of what needs to happen? Because that, at the end of the day, is going to save you if you go into a protest situation. And it is your job, whoever has been given that short straw to manage unemployment, which I'm assuming is all you guys right here, it's your job to protect your organization from financial and legal risk. And it's one of the things we tell people all the time is every employee is an unemployment liability waiting to happen. It's even your best employees. You never know what's going to happen. And we have seen, having done this for 40 years, we have seen everything happen. Everything. Unbelievable stories of people that, when they call us and they're like, I never thought this would happen to this person, or our CEO, greatest guy on earth. And he shows up to work yesterday and dressed in bubble wrap. He went off the deep end. It happens. We're all in very stressful jobs, and people that work, in the sector have very stressful jobs, and things happen. So we want to make sure that you're protected, and you should make sure that you yourselves are protected. And this is where the paperwork comes in, not letting any employee slide, from the CEO down to the mailroom. They have to sign and document everything that happens. So for people that want to consider opting out, there's actually four options you have available to you. One is, of course, staying in your state system. The pros to that are it's a fully insured system. You're fully insured no matter what. You're paying a lot for that insurance. So it's expensive, but you're fully insured. But it still takes management. You can't just pay your contribution and say, I'm done. Like I said, you need to manage every claim, because you want to make sure you're collecting less than the 6.2, or you're being issued less than the 6.2 tax rate. All right, so option 1 is the default, staying with California. The second option is to opt out and just manage the process in-house. You have every right to do that. You don't need to have a third party. We're pretty vocal, and I think the other third party administrators out there are pretty vocal on trying to get people who are trying to manage it in-house not to do that, because it's such an area of risk. It's like you're saying, I'm managing all our legal things in-house. Most people outsource that to a lawyer, or have a lawyer on their board or something like that. They don't try to handle and write those things in-house. We say the same thing about unemployment. Proper management of unemployment will reduce your costs. Yeah. Is that Dave? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. But managing it in-house, you can do, but it's probably the least expensive way to do it if you manage it properly. But the cons are that it's time consuming, it's risky. You need to make sure you have enough money accrued, because if you get a bill from the state, I think you have 7 to 10 days to pay that. So it has to be undesignated funds. It has to be a pot of money that you have set aside. The third option is you can actually opt out, and there's now some private unemployment insurance that is similar to the state, but it's less expensive than the state. So if you really want to go the way of just buying insurance, you can do that now, and it can cover some or all of your claims. So you can cover the first portion of them, and the insurance will kick in at a certain level and pay the rest, or the insurance will pay it from start to finish. And these are just some options available to you. It can be expensive, but it's generally less expensive than the state programs. And the fourth option is you can opt out and use a third-party administrator. We are a third-party administrator. There's other ones out there. I know Dave uses another one. We're all, we work simultaneously together on a lot of things. We worked very closely with Dave's third-party administrator during the pandemic. We all joined forces and did a lot of lobbying and tried to get the relief of charges for you, because at first reimbursing employers were not going to get COVID-related unemployment charges covered, which was a huge nightmare. I'm sure Dave's probably heard this from his person. But we got a lobbyist, we did all this stuff, and we got the charges 50% and then 75%. So that was really good. It was nice to work with the other third-party administrators out there. The nice thing about it is your unemployment is going to be managed by professionals, and we are professionals, they're professionals. And believe it or not, there's people who've done this their whole career, is managing the unemployment process. It's less time consuming for you. So we take a lot of the administrative burden off your shoulders. We will process that claim through the system. There will still be someone on your site who needs to be a point person, because obviously when a claim is filed, this person, if this is a valid claim or not. There'll be some communication, there's some paperwork, online forms that need to be filled out, but it is generally a lot less time consuming. We will make sure that everything's paid properly to the state. There's no penalties or fear of penalties that would happen. And there's a lot of added benefits that come with using a third-party administrator. There's HR support, there's reemployment services. We all do some things a little bit different, but we all try to support the customers that we have in the best way possible. So those are the only 4 options. You can't decide not to pay unemployment. Obviously, you have to pay it. And I did look up the Family Assistance Ministries, because there are some church groups that are exempt from unemployment, but I do not believe you guys fall into that. I believe you guys are an official 501c3. But these are your 4 options, and it goes from high to low. And they're just things to consider. This, you probably recognize this. This is something that you probably should have just received. It just went out in the mail a few days ago. People are starting to get it in. This is not an invoice. And a lot of people just glance at it and don't understand it too much and then file it away. But you can actually tell from this what your upcoming tax invoice is going to be. And this tells you what they paid out in charges the year before. There's things on here like a balance. This one actually has a negative balance, but some of them have balances of quite a bit of money, 6 figures in there, and they think that's their money, and it's not their money. And that's the money that they've essentially overpaid over the years into the state. But we run analysis off of these because these are official documents. So if you actually got one of these in, and you know, I told Robin that we would do this for you. We would do it for any nonprofit, but especially for you guys, it's a great way to do your due diligence. And we will just run some numbers for you and let you know if we think you're overpaying enough to opt out, and then look at what are the other options. So I'm really happy to do that for you. I put my email on here, and I'll actually send this to Robin, and she can look at this, or she could forward this whole presentation out. But that's a very high level piece on what your options are, why we think, and other third-party administrators and people believe that you should at least explore, and you should do it every few years if staying in the state is the right program for you, or whatever program you're doing, if it's the right program for you. Because everyone has accounts that are set up differently. You know, we ask for people to reserve money in their account so we can pay the state. The amount we ask them to reserve is a lot less than some of the other third-party administrators. So if that people switch back and forth, if they switched from another third party to our third party, they actually get a bunch of money back from their first third party. So that's kind of a bonus. But you know, I'm happy to give you this. I know a lot of boards are starting to ask their executive directors if they've looked into this, because we've all been doing a lot of marketing to boards to try to get them on board, no pun intended, but on board with at least exploring it. It doesn't cost anything to look at, do the due diligence. And like I said, well over 80% of the people that we do this for, we can uncover some hidden funds for you. And for us to be able to put money back into your pocket and keep it in your budget, so you can use it for staff, so you can use it for supplies, so you can use it for your mission. That's what our mission is. That's what we want to do, is help our customers make the right decision and save a lot of money. But is any other question on here? That anyone have a question that I can answer right now? Or if you have any questions, you can always email me. And I can dive into it a little bit deeper, but
I think Delia does.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi, Cynthia, this is really informational. I really appreciate you taking the time to provide us this service, but I did have a question for you. You talked about claims that are not protestable.
Yes.
Versus claims that are protestable. The claims that are not protestable, I understand that those are usually from the base period claims from previous employers, or what if you were a previous employer or whatever. Do those claims factor also into your rate, or is it
No.
more along?
No, they don't. They don't factor into our rate, but they would factor probably into the state rate. So we provide
the
a lot.
State rate. That's what I meant.
Yeah. Yes, they will. And because it's money that the state is paying out, whether or not they deserve to have that paid, or, if it's coming out of your account, technically, it's going to affect your rates. So because of that, and little things like that we've seen throughout our 40 years, we do special trainings on when you have an employee that you don't think is going to work out. We all do this. I have done it a million times. I think it's a good hire, and then I realize that right away it's a bad hire, right? And that happens. It's just not working out. But gosh, we want to try to see if we can, retrain them, or maybe we'll find something for them to do. At the end of the day, the longer you keep that employee, the longer you're going to have a share of that proportional cost, because you're eventually going to let them go. They're going to find another work. They're going to get laid off again because they're just not a good worker, and you're going to be paying all their unemployment. So we try to get people to, as soon as they know that there's something that's not working out, to just cut the cord right away. So we have all these little tricks and techniques that we advise people and on how to ultimately be paying out the least amount of. We want to pay for claims that are valid. We want you to pay. We want the separated employee to get that money. But for those ones that aren't and shouldn't be getting the money, we don't want you to pay for them. And we also don't want you to be on the hook for 26 weeks of unemployment, which you would be. At the state level, you were with 20, and as you probably have all experienced in your organizations now, people are staying on unemployment for 26 weeks. They wanted to collect those bonus amounts. And we're trying to, retrain these people. That's why we have these reemployment services that we offer employers to give to their separated employees. It's like, look, this didn't work out here, but we want you to get back to work sooner, So the sooner they can get back to work and get off unemployment, the less money is going to come out of your pocket. The less money is going to come out of your state account. So I hope, I would love to run these numbers for you. It only takes us about 24 hours to do it. And, you can see more about what your options are and take it to your board and see if they want to, make any decisions and stuff.
Cynthia, thank you so much. We're, like I said,
Sorry, I went a little bit over.
No, it's fine. We recorded this, and like I said, it'll be on our YouTube channel. So give it about 24 hours to load. So if any of you want to come back and revisit this and talk to, any of your board members that need to be involved with this, but great information. I mean, I look at this, I think, why doesn't everybody do it? But I'm sure there are reasons not to and reasons to, but as I said, I trust Cynthia that she's here to help us. So I would say reach out to Cynthia via email or reach out to me and I can forward it to you as well. But Cynthia, we just appreciate you taking the time to share your area of expertise.
And I'm happy to answer any further questions if anyone has any. In the middle of the night, you wake up and you're like, oh, I'm happy. Don't email me in the middle of the night, but any other time. All right.
Well,
Thank you guys.
Thank you, everybody. Stay well.
Bye.
Bye.
And we